Hey, welcome. This is The Process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is a continuation of my lessons. We're starting top to bottom, looking to drill down as the summer approaches. So this is for the 2022 season. We are still inside the big question of the predictability of ADP versus the end of the season results. We certainly understand things like injury or positions more fragile than other positions. I think that's been a topic and let's say it kind of an understanding that people believe that running backs are more fragile, and the zero running back draft strategy has come about because of that fragility. And the response is, anti-fragile, and that was the zero RB concept. I think that certainly has taken hold. We've had COVID the last couple years. That has potentially muddied the water a little bit and maybe even making some of these stats and our understanding a little skewed about, kind of before COVID. So with that in mind, I certainly like to look across multiple years, looking at how drafts unfold across those years, looking at ADP levels. And these are ADPs close to the beginning of the season, so they'll be late August, early September, right before game one. So you can see every year that ADP will change, certainly right after the draft in May. Things will start changing because of the landing spots for certain rookies, and free agency is going around at that time. So there's things happening as well, new coaches, new systems. So it's still a muddied mess, and it tightens and gets a little more in focus. So those of us who draft, say, June, do have to consider the variation that could happen. And certainly, they've been prominent preseason injuries that has also gotten certain people in trouble because of certain players get injured before they even get to game one. So that is part of the aspect of early drafting. A lot of people will be crying that you shouldn't draft before late August. Given the amount of money in the league would be what would be driving me if you're playing in relatively cheap redraft leagues, then I'm not sure, waiting till the end of August is, something that's required. I like early season. I believe there are opportunities that people are not processing the value, in quotes, value, what that means, early on versus later. Shh. It's my French bulldog going nuts. Hey, settle down. Okay, trying to talk here. So anyway, with that said, I've got a couple slides I want to continue the lessons on here. First slide is 2015. This is the overall title of this slide, 2015 to 2021. ADP And it's really just the running back and wide receiver positions from first pick to 24th pick. So round 1 and 2. Hey. So, excuse me. So the first 2 rounds. So if you think of these blocks, this is first to 6th pick, 7th to 12th, 13th to 18th, and 19th to 24th pick. Yellow squares are running back. The wide receivers are red diamonds with the blue line. I only wanted to do one with a line, so it's trying to make it a little clearer to distinguish the 2 positions. So it's from 2015 through 2021, and first round, and this is the number that were picked that year of each position. So there were 5 RBs picked last year and 1 WR. The year before, 5 and 1. 19, there was 4 and 2. 18, there was 5 and 1. It was an interesting year. 2017, it was 3 and 3. 2016 was actually 4-2, where wide receivers were taken, and then 2015 it was 4 and 2 running backs again. So running backs have pretty much ruled the roost, and now we're in this very skewed position. Just remember that there have been some years where wide receivers have been fairly prominent compared to the last 2, 3, 4 years. So just in your mind, keep that out there a little bit. So it's just not always, let me take an RB. There have been years that people have read the landscape differently. Just be aware of that. If you only look at the last 2, I think you've got the COVID and everything that's conspired to really push RBs up. And we've seen some highs and lows of RBs surviving the year or not at the end of the season. This is just looking at counts again, how people perceive. And then 7th to 12th, it is even more pronounced that running backs are a key. So there have been a few years where WRs have been a little more prominent than in the last 3 years, 4 years actually. So one needs to be aware of that. Not saying you should change anything for 2020, but in the first round here, if you break that into 2, there have been some wide receivers that are perceived to be as valuable or more valuable than most running backs. And the last couple years, that has not been the case. I think with Cooper Kupp this year, it could be possible that he will be the one WR that will be in the mix in the the first 6 picks potentially. So just be aware. I don't foresee more than 2 or 3, probably 3 wide receivers at best in the top, first 12. So I think it's pretty clear that 2022 will be, we will see a continuation. That doesn't mean that's the right way to draft. It's just we are looking at what the public, i.e. the average, has done. We can only make some really interesting decisions if we have a reference class in our forecast. And I have a whole lesson on reference class forecasting. You've got to understand that concept here before you decide. So right now I'm planning that we will have 2 to 3 WRs in the first 12 picks. So the question becomes, who should those be, and are they worth picking over certain RBs? Because you know that's coming, and those decisions, especially if you get picks 7 to 12, you're going to probably be in the hot seat to make that prediction. So just assume that's coming. Don't wait till the 10 minutes before to start trying to figure things out. Okay, I'm telling you, looking at what's gone on, that's kind of what I think the landscape will be. In round 2, on the other hand, what we've seen is that WRs enjoy much more success, and in 4 of the 7 years, WRs have really been heavily taken. And then what's interesting, people kind of, if you just think about rounds, you're, oh, okay, round 2, this is, well, actually, if you cut it into slices of 6, you actually see an interesting situation where the back half of round 2, we tend to see this equalization concept of RBs and WRs coming in at the same level. Certainly in 15, 16, and 17, it was 3 and 3, and then it was 3 and 2, and then 3 and 2, and 2020 it was 1 and 1. There was a lot of I believe quarterbacks taken that year. It was a very, very strange year. Tight ends, it was a really strange year in 2020, and then 2021 WRs really dominated. So I would predict that the first section of round 2 this year will be WR intensive. So then what you need to decide is which WRs are worth what running backs will be there. So imagine what running backs are there, and then why are they there? Why are these kind of the next wave of running backs? Why did these running backs go much higher? What is going on probably with the uncertainty level that people are perceiving, and that's why they're turning to WR, if that's really the case? Or are people just trying to stay balanced, grabbing an RB, then grabbing a WR? So they're feeling like they need to do that. Other words, are people grabbing 2 RBs, 2 WRs, or RBWR? And I think the balanced is probably what's most pronounced. And I think you see that on the back half of round 2, 19 to 24th, where there's a lot of equality between the 2 positions. So the way it looks is an RB, RB, WR, and maybe equal kind of skew on those 4 slices in the rounds. So depending on where your pick is, will depend on what is open up for you. So you should use this information to kind of make a pattern or a template or a thing that you then predict, and then according to your draft pick. And people, I think, lose track of that broader picture. I think that's why I like to look at especially the first, you know, 4 rounds of RB and WRs. And a lot of people are going to be 2-2. That's going to be the default tendency, is people are going to do that. And then rounds 5 and 6, they're going to start thinking tight ends and QBs in a normal 12-team redraft 1 quarterback league. I'm not talking super flex. I'm not talking tight end premium, anything really different, just vanilla type PPR situation. So that's what I think is going to be the case. I think as we get into June and whatnot, you will start seeing in the ADPs these kind of patterns. And it's a little early this year. If you're interested in kind of where people are going, there are some best ball situations, and I'm already in 4. And but these are tight end premium leagues, so tight ends are actually you know, in the conversation in the first 2 rounds in those kind of leagues. So that can muddy up your plans. But if you play in those leagues, then you certainly need to pay attention to where tight ends are if it's a tight end premium league. Not sure the quarterbacks are coming into play in the first 2 rounds. It's rare that quarterbacks are hitting in those in a 1 quarterback league here. So use this information and start planning your research. I didn't say plan your draft. Plan your research first, right? So the question is, what are the RBs that are worthy of first round? What are the WRs that are worthy of first round? And so forth. Okay. So I think I beat that to death, haven't I? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this is the 3rd and 4th rounds. And again, looking at the landscape of the positions and the numbers taken. So look in the first half of round 3. We see 4 of the 7 years has been WR dominant. So some people are getting RB, and then this is where they're picking up their first wide receiver. So the question is there a wide receiver in this world here, in this slice, that is worthy of you picking them up versus, I guess I should say, that is unworthy of being picked up earlier? So why are the WRs that are in this slice that are being drafted, why are they showing up here versus in the preceding round 2? So what's going on? So what's the flaw? What is the perceived flaws that is going on? So in your individual research, when you get to that point, we're not there yet. We're still at the top of the food chain here. We're not at the bottom yet. But that's what the landscape is saying, WRs. The next slice, the back half of round 3, is probably a little bit more equal than I think if you kind of bounce. It's been a lot more haywire. Like last year was 3 and 3. The year before was 4 and 2. Year before that was 4 and 1. So there's been a little bit more equality between the 2 positions there. So people potentially are grabbing their second RB at this point in this slice. So again, I think using ADP, looking at what's gone on before, a combination kind of should then direct your research is to the question, why are these players existing to these points? Why are they being delayed until this point, compared to the preceding? Or why are they picked now versus the round 4? What's going on there? And we see round 4 here, the first half, the first slice, is clearly WRs again. Okay, they're dominant. So we dominate here, we're equal here. So probably at this time, people have grabbed 2 RBs, 1 WR, and so they probably going to their second WR at this point, and that's what we're seeing here. And in this slice, the back half of the 4th round, we're seeing WRs a little bit ahead of the running backs. Not a lot, but in the last 3 years, definite domination here. So we start seeing a lot more in the rounds 3 and 4 of WRs at this point. Like I said, a lot of people are grabbing 2 running backs in the first couple rounds and then coming back with 2 WRs. Is that better than running back, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver concept? So you need, again, when you're going into your drafts, have done the research, and this data here should kind of give you a prediction at what the ADP is going to kind of look like. What in each of the, I like to look at the slivers, so you can track, and I probably should have made this figure, that if you've got the first pick, then where will your picks be in each of the rounds, that kind of thing. So you can kind of shore that up to actually what the patterns have been. But again, why is one position dominant over the other? What is delaying some of these WRs from being taken, say, in the 3rd round versus the 4th? What's going on here? Okay, this is not random. People, a majority, the average, having this reference class forecasting data here, something is going on. The team, is there a committee approach going on? Are the players themselves inconsistent? Are there rookies? Did they have some injuries? What's muddy in the water that's causing these players to land here? And does that make sense using other streams of data? So multiple streams of data, okay, not just ADP, not just this positional analysis that I do. Other kinds of data can kind of make or break some of your research decisions here in these first couple of rounds. So this seems pretty straightforward, and you say, well, I always do this or I always do that. What's worked before may not work for you again. So to rely on what got you a win last year may not work again. So I would not use that as an excuse to lay back and not do research. Okay, I'm advocating doing research, thinking about what's going to be there. What is the landscape predicted to be in each round, or actually each slice? I like to look at in slices of 6 picks. I think that's the best way to look at your draft, is that way, because I think you can get a deeper focus. If your competitors are just kind of hazily saying, oh, third or fourth. And it's not very exact. Is it the third round you're going to do something or the fourth round? To kind of have an approach, well, I'll pick one up somewhere. Boy, I would think, especially in a time draft, if you got a minute or two, and if that's your plan, then you're probably going to make the wrong move. I do slow drafts, and I do a lot of deeper thinking and thinking about the landscape. What am I expecting? What's going on? And then there's some key players that are probably going to appear in these slices. Am I picking one? Am I going further down because I'm perceiving some type of value play? What am I doing here? You've got to map this out, and it can't be, during the draft where you're trying to pick some players at that point. It is worth your time to put that investment in, and I hope you're listening here to me. And let's see, I think that. So the next thing, this is just the positional numbers of RB and WR, and I added a trend line. And what you see from 0 to 6 is the first slice, round 1, across the different years. So you've seen this data. I just put it all together for you. So this is round first pick to back about 58 or so. I think I went a little further than I did previous. And I gave you a polynomial trend line. I think it's a little more accurate. And the yellow line, the trend line, is RBs. And the red is the WRs, and you see that they are converging somewhere between the 18th and the 20th pick right there. That RBs are being highly sought after here, and they are going down to about 2 per slice, and WRs are going 3 and even 4 per slice. So that's going to be the landscape. So it's another way to look at the landscape. And that's not changing even into the 5th round. You're still seeing that WR bias here at that point. So people are grabbing their 2 RBs somewhere early, then grabbing WRs, and probably, like I said, round 4 and 5, 5 and 6, probably taking a tight end and maybe a quarterback, or some people are doing 3 and 3. This idea of being balanced after the 6th round, I'm not sure that's the best approach all the time. In fact, I try not to do that, but let me ask you this. Do you have the bravery to pick 4 running backs in a row or 4 WRs in a row? You will see that rarely happens. And, some people say, well, I pick for value. Well, if the value keeps telling you to pick one position or the other, how far down does your value plays go versus you're getting worried, wow, I'm really biased to one position over the other? Kind of an extreme RB, 0 RB, an extreme 0 WR concept. Just how far down are you going to be? You need to decide, I think, how you're going to play that. If people are just wacky, what is going on? Most people are not going to be wacky. ADP is there because it's the average, and that's probably what can be expected here in your draft. But you can see the overall trends of what the public and most of your league mates are going to be pulling the first 4 or 5 rounds here. This is how it's going to go. And but notice the RBs really never go away. If you look here, they really start at least 2 per slice is going on, where WRs are 3 per slice. So it's not like it's 1 and 5. They're almost close to being the same here. Okay, in some positions they are 3 and 3. Okay, so there's this sameness or a little bit of skew to the RB, but it's not just dramatic. This trend line might suggest that, but if you look a little deeper, it's not as much as the trend line might tell you. But you can on average expect, probably a 3 or 4 WRs versus a 2 running backs per slice in the 3rd and 4th round. Okay, so again, I like to use that. I like to make positions. I like these overall patterns to lead me to my depth, my research questions. So I urge you to do the same. Coming back with more lessons. Thanks for listening. This is Dr. Bush for the process. Come back. We're having lots of fun.